Welcome to the Joypunk podcast. I'm Jenelle, Etzel, your host, and my guest today is Jill Kuehler, founder and CEO of Freeland Spirits, started right here in Portland, Oregon in 2017. Jill and her team at Freeland Spirits are dedicated to hiring and caring for a diverse staff and understands the strength and resilience that builds into any company. Kuehler earned her master in education at PSU and 2 years later took the helm as executive director for the Portland nonprofit Zenger Farm. She grew Zenger Farm in staff size and service capacity, which now reaches 10,000 community youth annually, and helped create its new urban grange. Freeland Spirits ranks among a mere handful of women-owned and operated distilleries in the world. Jill is also a Texan, Texans having some of the most punk rock attitudes of folks I have met along the way. And Jill is a shining, never give up example of Joypunk leadership. I am also an investor and a friend of Jill's and one of her biggest fans. Sister, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jenelle. What an awesome intro. Yeah, Texas, what's up?
Your distillery, Freeland Spirits, is named after your Memaw,
That's right.
which is Texan for grandma.
That's right.
Is that
Southern,
correct?
I'd say Southern for grandma. A lot of Southern folk have Memaws.
And your Memaw also was a teetotaler, which, the irony here is so great. What made you think to name the Devil's Water after your Memaw?
Well, I enjoy irony, for one, but Memaw, I grew up in her garden with her. It was some of my happiest memories. Memaw and Pop they're my mom's parents, lived on this lake, and it was just that wild childhood freedom of playing in the lake, playing in the woods, and growing vegetables. You know, we would grow things and can peas, and it was just like sitting beside grandma, hearing that like tink of dropping the peas in the tin. She was the breadwinner in the family. She was a teacher. This still blows my mind, but like, even though my grandpa really didn't earn much of a living, back in the 80s, women couldn't get their own mortgage without a man signing for it. You must know this.
Yeah.
So anyway, she was just this like stalwart, tough woman. But I, also had such fond memories, playful memories of being in that garden. And I really fell in love with food and agriculture because of Memaw. And so now we're making things that are, the blue bottle gin as botanicals that are fresh from the Oregon farm fields. So it's a celebration of what comes from our farm fields. And it's an honor, a nod to Memaw and my childhood, even though she never touched a drop of booze.
My grandmother, I spent a lot of time with my grandma and grandpa, Etta and John, in the garden too. But at 3:00, grandma was done, sat on the deck, and cracked a hams.
Hell yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Land of sky blue waters. I can still hear that in my head. You, on your website, I was looking at the Freeland website, and it said that your grandma had 2 different kind of rules in life. Do you want to tell us those 2 rules?
I don't know that they were ever spoken rules, but
Yeah.
it was like the good things in life come from scratch.
Yeah.
And women can be anything they want to be. And I just finished a book, Lessons in Chemistry. I don't know if you...
such a fun book.
And just like, that was our grandma's generation. And, the woman on the front of our bottle, she's this proud, empowered woman holding up her stalk of grain. And I really think of all of our grandmas, like, that never got to be what they probably really wanted to be in life. So it's like, now it's our turn to like hold up their stalk of grain for them. I don't know. She worked so damn hard. I don't know that she was ever going to go out and fight for women's rights, but that's what she would have said, right?
Right.
Women can be anything they want to be. And a lot of it was just out of force, in a time of the Depression. And like, you have to grow food because you have to feed your family, not because it's fun.
And oftentimes the things that are modeled for us they're a lot more powerful than what's said. We're paying attention. Like I have to remember that all the time. I know you're raising a kid, I'm raising some, and it's like they're paying attention. It don't matter what we say.
For better or worse, right?
Yeah, they're watching. on that line of, your grandmother not being able to be what she wanted, and you coming in and tackling this industry of whiskey distillery. Like, are there other women at all in America that have done this? Or, what was that a thought to you when you wanted to start this? Like, did you know you were coming into a playing field where you would be the only or one of the only few?
Yeah, and I think it's part of what attracted me to it. It's like, ooh, that sounds fun to play with, to flip on its head a little. And it all started when I was drinking whiskey, as I like to do. But while I was at Zenger Farm, and I got to know my good friend, Corey Carmen. She raises grass-fed beef out in the Wallowas in Eastern Oregon, one of the most beautiful parts of the world. And we are whiskey drinking buddies, fateful whiskey drinking night, and we're drinking some delicious Kentucky bourbon. But just talking about, like, what is the terroir story of our spirits? Who grows the botanicals in our gin? And what kind of grain is in our whiskey? And who grew it? And how is it made? And we just don't think about it as much as we do with wine or even beer. So a couple more whiskeys go by, and Corey's like, I'll grow it if you make it. And that night was really the birth of it, but also when I got really excited about how we could tell the story of women, the women growers. I mean, how many female ranchers do you know? And then even fewer female distillers at the time. There were truly just a handful in the world. And luckily, we're seeing more and more come into the industry, which is super exciting. But at, just 6 years ago, it was truly just a handful. So that got me super excited. How can we really turn the story around? So I found Molly, who is our master distiller, who had a background in chemistry before she got her master's in distilling in Scotland, and was running production at a small distillery in Bend. And I heard of this mythical woman and just went out to Bend and threw over my shoulder, and we started making Freeland gin.
I love it's a story about women, but like you said, it's really a story about the land. It started in that conversation about, where does this come from? Like wine, you have a story, it has a sense of place. And bringing that to anything we consume, I think, helps us connect all of us a little more. And I feel like it's almost an environmental play in this way of like, let's really honor the earth and where these things come from.
And it's more delicious.
Yeah, and it's more delicious. Your background is in, environmental education to some extent. So before you got here, got a master's in education. And then how did you wind up leading Zenger Farm? And can you tell our listeners what Zenger Farm is? It's such an incredible, magical place if folks haven't been there.
Sure. It's funny because I actually am not a very good teacher. My grandma was a teacher, then my mom was a teacher. And I think I kind of, I first went to the Peace Corps in Guatemala and was doing health education in very rural elementary schools. But what I really fell in love with there was small-scale agriculture. And I realized how important it is to tie education and food together and power, and how many lessons can be shared through that. So I came back, moved up to the Pacific Northwest, never having been. Ultimately, it was such a dream job being at Zenger. It wasn't just the education, which I did none of. Like, as the director of it, I made sure, like, I am not going to be the teacher. There are people who are really good at that. But we also did a lot of food justice work, like matching SNAP dollars spent at farmers markets. We were one of the first farmers markets to do that. Also, we started working with health clinics where they could give prescriptions for CSAs, and that work is still going at Zenger Farm, which was awesome. It just became this almost little think tank that other organizations across the country could model aspects of, which is just such a dream. While I was there, like I said, I got to know Corey. I always had wanted to start my own business. We helped build what's called the Urban Grange, which is this beautiful, it's like an oasis. It's a cooking kitchen. Kids can go there. It's for all of their summer camps. It's this beautiful building that overlooks the farm fields. And I knew I wasn't going to be like the director to move into that space. I wanted to raise the money and help build it and then pass it off to the next leader. At the same time, I was ready to launch Freeland.
I think a lot of people that have been a part of nonprofits or they've been in businesses, they probably have a lot of respect for what it means to go through a capital project, like raising capital for a project. And what do you think the largest challenge was and like what I think so many people would have shied away from that. And you were like, oh, I'm going to do the hardest part of this whole thing and then hand it off to the next person to go. Like, where did that come from? Where'd the gumption come from to be like, oh, that's for me?
I think I have a penchant for self-torture. Like the most distinct moment during that campaign, because, we did some back of the napkin work with the contractor. Oh, we think we can do this for $1.5 million. And of course, the inevitable time comes when you're getting the bids and it's double plus. And I'll never forget, I went home that day and literally like curled up in the fetal position at home and get this knock on the door. And our program director, David, who is still one of my dearest friends, had a case of beer. He was like, we're drinking this tonight. And tomorrow you're getting out of bed and you're going to figure this out. And I think it was just, and then the almost same replica thing happened at Freeland, where it's like, okay, of course it's cost. The cost is double what I thought it was going to be to build out the space. Like capital campaigns are just take years off your life. But it's, if you have people around you who will show up with that case of beer, like, you just need your community around you to survive them.
Yeah. It's like we all need those people in our lives that are like, I'm going to be with you. I feel you for a little bit, but tomorrow I need you to get back to work.
Yeah, there's that piece of it too. It's not like I'm just going to come wallow here with you. It's a little bit of an ass kick too. Like, I know you can do this and you're going to show up tomorrow and figure it out.
Yeah, I see you. You've gone through this major capital campaign as the executive director for Zenger. And then you launch right into starting a distillery, which requires a decade of time, right? Your whiskey's not even ready for years. So you've got your timeline and then really cost heavy right in the beginning. So you put yourself right in that position again where you had to raise funds. What do you think was the most challenging aspect of and did you take lessons too from Zenger to Freeland? But what were the surprise challenges in raising money for both those organizations?
Well, I think I was a little surprised. I thought it would be a lot easier with Freeland because I'm like, there's actually a chance you'll get your money back. Like with a nonprofit, it's just a donation. So I was like, oh, this must be way easier. But it was incredibly difficult. And I mean, writing should have been on the wall, right? Like I'm coming into this industry with no experience. I didn't even have a space. I didn't have a product for people to try. So I was just like, here I am, just a gal who's like, imagine. And at least, Zenger was really tough too with fundraising, but there was this physical space that people could come to and could fall in love with the mission. It could look right across the farm fields and see not only this beautiful farm, but like dozens of classrooms and kids that are learning and like in real time. It wasn't easy, but it was an easy thing to fall in love with. And with at least those early days of Freeland, it was very conceptual. So it took a little more work than I thought. And like you said, it's incredibly capital intensive. Like I was, not only is it like a product or an aging product for that matter, but you're looking at $1 million in equipment and then a landscape where less than 5% of small business loans go to women, less than 3% of venture capital money goes to women. And if you're a woman of color, those odds literally become like close to zero. So it just makes it like almost impossible to achieve. But for some reason, like I said, penchant for self-torture, I think I'm just kind of drawn like moth to the flame. Don't tell me. Maybe this is from Memaw, like don't tell me I can't do something. Damn it.
I understand that grit, like the determination, right? Like I'm gonna do it. Tell me I can't do it. I'm gonna do it. But at what point did you start feeling like maybe this is gonna happen? Was there like a key person or event? And I'm sure that you had those and then you went back to like, oh God, I'm never gonna do it. But what do you think was the turning point?
I think there was the early days, like right when I left Zenger Farm, I was thinking of the idea and I would talk myself out of it as the day would go on. I would be like, there's a million reasons not to do this. But I'd wake up the next day, like all excited about it again. And then, it'd kind of like dip as the day would go on. But I finally got to the point where I was just looking at Charlie, my kiddo, and I was like, I want them to see like their mom going for the thing. If it's them, that's what I would tell them to do. Like, go for it. Like, why not? And I was like, okay, even if Charlie and I end up on the streets, at least they'll have seen their mom like going for the thing. And that was, I think, really the turning point of like, let's just take the plunge. And worst case scenarios, it doesn't work, right? And then there will be something else. So, and I still think that, there's still a million things that could go wrong with this. And, Freeland will survive in some form. But, again, like I'll think something else. And it's just like, at least the kid will have seen and have that example as they go for their big thing.
You gave it your best.
Yeah.
How have you, I know I've battled with this time and time again, is like, what is enough? Like, have I given enough? How have you set boundaries for yourself that you still have time for Charlie and yourself and your life and family? Because I know that there's not a lot. Like when you own a business, it's a lifestyle. It's everything. It comes home. Everybody's working.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a bullshit work-life balance. Like I hate those words like so strongly. Because it implies that work isn't a part of life. And it's this is like a child in a way. It's very much a part of my life. I'm not a perfectionist. I don't believe in perfection. I am very much okay with like good enough. And I really believe in having the right team of people around you, whether they work for you or whether they're just, like EO, right? You and I are both in Entrepreneurs Organization. And I think having like a group of peers that understands the challenges so deeply, like in a way of like, I've been there, done that kind of way.
The dark moments.
Yeah.
The pack of beer and I'll drink with you, and then tomorrow we're getting back to work.
Yeah. And one of my forum mates, Paul Weinert of Greybox, he has this phrase. I think about it almost every day. Play a beautiful game.
Yeah.
So I think about that with Freeland all the time. Like, I love play. I want there to be an element of play in everything I do. But I feel like those words, play a beautiful game, like it's also pushes you, like have fun, but, make it beautiful. And I feel like that rings really true for Freeland because I do believe in the beauty of what we're making. But there's also like, and celebrate it too. And I think sometimes as the like one always pushing, like there's an irony in that of like, wait, the pause to celebrate, like you can't forget how critical that piece of it is.
Yeah. For years, I really struggled with the celebration part because I was just always looking ahead to the next thing. And I would go on. And what I realized is really burning out and exhausting my staff in the way that they're like with me, but they need me to like turn around every once in a while and be like, look what we did. And, and have those moments. And we actually have that built into our operating system now, the way we structure each quarter, and we have what is a target that we're going to celebrate this quarter, and then and it's funny, it's just like a skill I don't have. Every time it's like, so what should our theme be? And I can do so many things in business, but how to celebrate? I'm like, I don't know.
But I think the piece that you're really good at that I think is equally important is gratitude. Like, as I think celebration and gratitude are so huge, and like you're the queen of just sending a handwritten note to people, and it floors them because who does that anymore? But it's
thanks.
So important, and it's almost part of your brand. It's just like it's super personal and it's really important. And I feel like a lot of us, including me, will skip over that piece and just the constant move to what's next.
There aren't a lot of quiet moments, but when there are, generally I'm brought back to a place of I'm just so humbled that there's people participating in my real estate fantasy. Right? Like, like somehow you talked all these people into, let's start a distillery. And they're all along, like playing the game.
In my booze fantasy.
Right?
Love it.
Wow, thank you. Because it is all made up, really, at some point. One of my favorite things when bringing out my bottles of Freeland Spirits is to ask people what they think of the bottle. Because the bottles are so beautiful. And I also think it looks like a really beautiful like 70s tit, like the real kind of boobs.
Yeah.
Before all the cosmetics
Ooh,
came in.
that's the hot ones.
The hot
like
ones.
gorgeous Playboy models that are like real bodies.
Yeah. Right?
That's like the best compliment ever.
Yeah, I would see that. And then sometimes I'm like, maybe it looks a little bit like a uterus too.
Well, that was funny. I was doing a liquor store tasting once, and this older couple walks in, and this woman just grabs the bottle, turns it upside down, and turns to her husband, is like, "It's a uterus." And it was almost like he knew it was coming. He's like, "Oh, here she goes." Like he just walked away. It was amazing. Yes, it's a boob and a uterus. I mean, how amazing.
I just love, where did the design, I mean, the whole design for Freeland is just, it's so beautiful and it's very evocative of the feminine, the land. It's so celebratory. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying with the woman on the front, she's like, I like to think of her as like our grandmas, not held back by the patriarchy, like just emboldened, going for their dreams. And the shape, the teardrop shape is like two things. One is the rain of the Pacific Northwest and what makes our fields so fertile. So it's really a homage to the Pacific Northwest rain. And then also there's a bar in Portland, the Teardrop Lounge, one of the original cocktail bars in Portland. And the owner, Daniel, was a huge help as I was getting Freeland started, helped me. We visited distilleries. He let me train with his bartenders. And so it was also a nod to the Teardrop Lounge.
Oh, that is so cool.
And of course, a hot 70s tit and a uterus.
Yeah.
All combined.
Well,
yeah.
Ironic that's how all those things would turn out. And then, of course, they're all those things. You were talking about, only 3 to 5% of funding goes to women, yet women own the majority of small businesses in America, I believe, is the stat. There's like more small business owners that are women than men, but they're getting all the funding. What do you think that is? And in your experience, like, I'm sure you've thought about it a lot, having gone through that process, and did that shape the way you went about raising funds?
I mean, it's crushing. Like I hate these statistics so much. And I think like when you look at the venture capitalists, people invest in people who look like them. Like, same as people hire people who look like them. Like this is what humans have been doing forever. And it actually takes like rewiring to realize, oh, actually diversity is good for business. And it's same with the lending environment. Like, oh, there are actually other people than white men that can succeed in business. But it's also a bigger problem of just inequity. Like, you have to have the leverage to be able to get a loan. You have to have capital to loan against. You have to have assets. And not a lot of women have that. So it's like there's still so much work we have to do to catch up, to make it so we're getting at least, representation of how many small businesses do we own. Like that's how much of the lending pool we should be getting.
Because I'm in real estate, it was a real estate leadership podcast. I'm assuming that I know that you owned your home. Was that a big part of you even being able to get some of the financing? Is just the fact that you were a homeowner?
Absolutely. And, that house is still leveraged, right? So that's when I say like Charlie and I could end up on like quite literally, right? Because everything I own is leveraged to have this business. So that it just takes like an almost, when people ask like, should I start my own business? I actually pause.
Yeah, me too.
Because like, it's so much to put at risk, and it's not for everyone. I think there's a whole lot of ways to make a living, and if I tell people only do it if you can't help yourself. If you can talk yourself out of it, do it. Talk yourself out of it.
I was locking up my bike today and I had that thought, man, there's a lot easier ways to make money, but I don't want to be doing anything else. So
and
here we are.
Right? And then you ask, a lot of us, what would you rather be doing? And I'm like, oh, wait. Can't think of it.
It feels like you've used Freeland to really like shine a spotlight on other women. You guys do the drinks like that are from like history's greatest women. But what are other ways that you've really taken the initiative to highlight women and increase diversity into the business?
So we do a free spirits program. So once a quarter, we celebrate a female identifying Oregonian who's doing really groundbreaking work, and usually somebody who isn't in the spotlight, who's like could use that light shined on them in a way that hasn't been before. And then she gets to design a cocktail kit with the tasting room staff, and a percentage of proceeds goes to whatever nonprofit she chooses. So that's been a really fun program since the inception of Freeland. That's, I think, given a platform to a lot of women who really deserve it. We did something this Women's History Month that meant a lot to me personally. We did a grant program. So we did a $10,000 grant to a woman-owned business. So that was really
that's awesome.
Great of just, when this kind of dearth of funding opportunities for women to get their businesses off the ground, that felt really close to home and meant a lot to me. When we were designing Freeland, particularly our tasting room, I wanted it to be, my goal was if a woman wants to come in here and have a drink by herself, there's a space that she can be perfectly safe. And everything from is the parking lot lit? Is if she has a question, she's not going to be met with, that's a stupid question. It's going to be how much time do you have? And then she could go on a tour in the back and hear everything about distilling and how we make our products. So I think it's everything from how we design our team, how we celebrate our team, to thinking of our customer base, and then how we choose to allocate very limited donation dollars to.
Something that I actually took away from our mutual friend, Cyrilda Summers McGee, was on here. It was a great conversation. And she had brought up that she felt like one of the most impactful things that we could actually do to really improve the community for Black folks here in Portland is make liquor licenses easier. And at first I was taken back, what? And what, how is that? And then she was just emphasizing, if you don't have a place to go and celebrate and meet up, that's, you can work, but you don't have life outside of work. You don't have community. And I've really been thinking about that a lot, internalizing it and thinking about, you've created a space for women, the sports bra. How amazing. I love going there and to walk in and know it's going to be about women's sports. It's going to be about me. I'm going to see the games I want to see and the players, and there's women, and it's, I'm not going to be talked down to by someone about what's going on TV. And sometimes I think we think diversity and inclusion means inviting people in, but actually to support others to create their own space and invite their people in, and maybe we get to be a guest. Anyway, I didn't know if you had the thoughts about, or I'd love to hear your thoughts on the community building you've been able to do through having Freeland open the open doors. Because you could have just kept it a distillery without the tasting room, but you've really opened up and created this community there that is really beautiful.
Yeah, and I would say it's evolved, right? It wasn't necessarily the intent that we're going to have a drag show every month, but it's us, and it's so the ethos of us, but it's also how our own team has evolved and what's important to them, and how we can just give a place, whether it's a queer book club to come and meet, or to have painting classes while people drink, or it's really responding to what people want to see there. And yeah, I think it's how we go out into the community too. We were just pouring drinks at the Sports Bras Pride event yesterday. They're the things we have, we're going to have a watch party for the first World Cup match at Pioneer Courthouse Square. And so the stuff that Jenny and I come up with together, that stuff means everything to me, of the fun partnerships you can do that, it's not always about business, though business definitely benefits from it, but it's also just fun and creative. We get to open at the Portland Airport. We're getting a retail spot.
Oh, that is awesome. Congratulations.
Super exciting. And we're opening at a similar time of Smith Tea. So we're talking with Smith Tea of what kind of cool collaboration we could come up with to match that. So we're just living a really cool city of people who love collaboration. And it's rarely about the competition side of it, and recognizing, we are competing, but that's not really the primary topic of conversation. It's how can we all advance each other? And I just love it.
want to go back to this woman, Molly, that you put over your shoulder and Bend. I'm guessing that not only did you know it was going to be impossible what you were doing, but that you were looking for a unicorn to find, or maybe not. Maybe they just aren't celebrated or out there. I really don't know. But to find a female distiller to help you do this vision. Like, did you know of her? Did you have to look for her hard? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, I think, so you can kind of go different paths, right? You can make it yourself or you can contract it out. So I very well could have been a woman-owned brand and partnered with another distillery to say, here's my recipe and everything, and they could make it and send it out. But it was really important to me that we make it ourselves. I also don't know shit about distilling. So I still don't. They don't even let me in the back. They see me walking and they're like, oh my God, something's going to break as soon as she walks through the doors. So a friend of mine knew of Molly. I was hell-bent on it being a woman distiller. I knew how few there were. And I was like, if this place could be not only a platform for a female master distiller, but we could also use it as a training ground for more women to get into the industry. Because, there are training programs, but you show up. I showed up to one in Chicago and it was me and 60 men. And, a few of them had brought their wives, but that was it. Is like, there were so few. So I was like, wow, what an opportunity. Like, what if we could show like female identifying, queer, trans people, like you have a place in this industry too. So anyway, back to Molly. I heard of this woman and I just went out there to meet her. And at first she was like, sure. I didn't believe me for a second that I was going to be able to pull it off. And I think a lot of people want to start distilleries. It sounds so cool and sexy. So a few months go by, I'm getting the bottle designed and I go back out to Bend and I show her a picture of it. And that's when she was like, when can I quit my job? And so
it's that boob.
It's the boob. But one of the things I really love about the woman-operated side is women have like way more olfactory cells and taste buds. And it's like the fact that women haven't been a part of this industry is like there's this whole palette that's missing from the world because women haven't been a part of making our spirits. So I think that's just awesome. And to watch Molly, like she's truly creative. She has that amazing balance of creative and chemistry. But she can actually in her head kind of have an idea of like how coriander and angelica root are going to play together, which blows my mind. So it's been awesome to give her, this playing ground to create new things. We just came out with forest gin, just going out and foraging chanterelles and nettles and salal berries and stuff. This is like, okay, our blue bottle gin is our nod to the farms of Oregon, and this forest gin is like, we're 5 blocks away from one of the world's biggest urban forest reserves, a forest park. And so it's like we get to a nod to that. And Molly just gets to start tinkering of like, cool, let's try out what a little bit of stinging nettle is going to do in a gin. So
that is so fun. I remember when I took your tour early on, you have this magical machine that takes out the essence of and it just, I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but I love cooking. I love drinks. And my mind went bananas with the amount of things you could do with that to like get the essence.
Yeah, it's called a rotovap. When Molly and I first started working on gin way back, she was going through lots of different iterations of it and we couldn't quite nail it. We're like, something's missing, but we really wanted to use fresh ingredients. The problem was, our still's name is the Hellbitch. It was named after Lonesome Dove. So I got it put in place and I sent a picture to my brothers, like, what should her name be? I was on an 18-month wait list. So it was like a long time coming to get this beautiful 500-gallon copper pot still. Sent a picture to my brothers, what should her name be? They were like, Hellbitch, because we had all grown up, the whole family. Lonesome Dove is the family Bible. And Hellbitch was the horse who could not be tamed. And Molly at first was like, oh, no. I will tame her. I'm like, exactly. Your cowboy call, who's the one cowboy who could tame the Hellbitch. But if you were to put like fresh cucumber into the Hellbitch, it would taste like, cooked cucumber. And as a cook, that would taste like shit. So Molly with her background in chemistry, knew of the rotovap, which is a tool of vacuum distillation, kind of like how the most common use is in the essential oil industry. So you're essentially distilling at room temperature. So we, a group of gals up at Vibrant Valley Farm, we're about to start working with some other Sauvie Island farms, grow cucumber, mint, rosemary, thyme, and we also use honey on the rotovap. And then it's called like a flavor bomb. So it's a pretty small percentage of what's in a bottle of gin, 'cause 14 other botanicals are done on the Hellbitch. But we're one of the only distilleries in the world that combines those two distillation processes to make our gin. And now with the forest gin, those fresh forest botanicals are being distilled on the rotovap as well.
It is so cool.
It's pretty cool.
And you can taste the magic.
It's really special. Yeah.
James and Deborah Fallows, they were writers for The Atlantic. They actually found that if a town has a brew pub, it's one of the 10 signs that a city or a town is progressing and will thrive.
Cool. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. Really, like, we think of these things as like kind of outside human needs. It kind of gets back to that point too that Cyrilda made, that like if we want Black community here, then like give them a liquor license.
Right.
This is actually how people thrive. Let's get rid of our puritanical ideas about
exactly
what's good for who, and let's really let people gather and meet. And you're the community that you've built. Since you've been doing this, I'm guessing that you've gotten to travel and meet other women that are on this path. And I know you've attracted some like big name stars who want to collaborate with you and all sorts of things. Like, what have been some of those fun stories and fun adventures of the other folks you've met out there?
One of my dearest friends in the industry is Karen Hoskin is her name. She owns Montagna Rum. And she was way ahead of her time and launched a rum distillery in Cresta Butte, Colorado, of all places. She was probably the first woman-owned distillery in the U.S. and has built something so beautiful with a lot of the same ethos that Freeland has. And she's been such a mentor to me and a friend. And like, she'll answer any question. She's just like an open book. And it's just been awesome for me to have that. And I look forward to being that for other women coming into the industry. And I know Molly does too and already has.
For women that are running small businesses that are feeling alone, like I'm sure you have felt many times doing what you're doing, what would you tell them? What would you say to them? What would you go back and say to yourself in those early moments?
Yeah, it's like start by like if you are going to go against our advice and actually start a business, don't do it alone. I mean, granted, I did it alone. I don't have partners. I have investors, which are amazing, but you're always in this place of like, you can't tell, there's nobody you could tell everything to, right? Because you're like, I'm not going to tell somebody when I had to choose between paying my mortgage and paying payroll, because those are the moments that happen, right? And it doesn't help your team to hear that, nor your investors. So I think that's when having that community that you can lean on is everything. You just, who you go home to or who you can call the middle of the night, like have at least that person, if not a bunch of people that have your back. And that you've done a good job, I think, of building your community.
I got a little chills when you said who you go home to, because I was actually journaling this morning about being a female entrepreneur and how many times I was given signals or told, the message I was getting was this, like, you can't have love, or it's going to be really hard for you to have love because the whole world wanted me to date someone more successful than me. Great. Now you've narrowed down the dating pool because they're defining that with make more money or be more out there. And it's like, what does success mean to you? And it can pull at you too, where you're trying to define for yourself what success looks like and what you want from relationships. And I remember joining EO, and there were about 100 members at the time, and only 11 of them are women. Every single one of them was divorced but one. And that was 5 or 6 times higher the rate of divorce than our men counterparts. because what they're doing, the whole world's looking at and applauding. It's with the grain. And then you
Right.
have these women out here. And I think sometimes that it's hard. Like being a female entrepreneur is hard, and you feel alone. I think all entrepreneurs probably feel alone. And then you go and try to date or do these normal things that anybody does. And then you're again giving the signals that it may be harder for you, or you're going to be alone.
We accept it for men, like being single, it's hard to find someone who you're like, I don't know when I'm going to be home. It's we've still got this culture where it's like, of course a woman's home by 5 o'clock, and that's dating men or women. It's just like we still have this culture that's not used to us being successful, and certainly not at our own ventures. We have more and more women-owned companies, but they're still really small. There are very few women trying to be big, and I think we really need more of that. Let's have some more women-founded global companies.
And why aren't there?
Well, go back to when they're founded, right? Like if you have to give up the majority of your equity before you even open your doors, can you even claim to be women founded at that point? It's like, if we don't start from the beginning of how they launch and then figure out how to better support them all along the way, and it's going to take having more women on the investing side, right? And that's why I'm really excited and proud that the majority of our investors are women. A lot of them have never invested in a company before. So if we succeed, they succeed, and then they're going to invest in other women, and we're going to start a cycle that, can hopefully spread and support more women. But yeah, at the home, right? It's like, it's still this kind of archaic world in a little bit, right? Of it's hard to find people to date that are going to applaud you and not feel like it's a threat.
You have a lot of women that invested. How did you find female investors, or did they find you?
It's a great question. A little bit of both, mostly me. So it helped to have been in the nonprofit world for a couple of reasons. One, I'd worked with a lot of boards. And so I had people that had been donating to the organizations that I worked with and trusted me. So that was one good way. Another thing with nonprofits is, you learn how to do shit scrappy, and that transfers really well to starting a business. So it was just, how could me and Molly scrape by on our own for as long as possible? But, it would be like meeting one great woman and she'd be like, let me introduce you to another one. Let me introduce you to another one. And it was that, just like mostly Portland women that came together. And I think they were all just so believed in what we were doing and wanted to see more of it. And there's even, it was cool to see some neighbors just around the distillery, like, oh my God, this is coming to my neighborhood. Let's bring you over to a cocktail party at my house and get as many women as we can. And let's fly down to San Francisco and drum up some support down there. So, it was a crew of about 5 gals that just rallied and helped close that initial funding round.
That's so awesome. I feel so dumb coming in so late as an investor. But for me, and knowing you, and I knew you were at Zenger, I was like, this is a no-brainer. You're not going to have trouble raising money.
But it was as much, I've been raising money my whole career. There's still nothing harder than asking your friends for money. And it's something you're like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. So it was almost easier to go to strangers than to ask my own friends. And I think that, I don't know, that's something I need to get over. But
yeah, no, I totally understand that with business too. It's so much easier. So that's the only way they know you. There's all this other stuff. But I remember the moment for me was sitting actually coming into the tasting room, and you were like, yeah, I've got these orders in California I can't fulfill. We're out of money and I need bottles. And I'm like, oh, I'm in. I should have been in long ago. And that, I think too, I see the lens from which maybe I should see it more clearly as a woman, but the story, the idea, I saw it so clearly with you that I was like, this is this is it. Like, this is a total home run. That's so clear to me. And to know, even with all of what you had and this being a Texan and distilling whiskey and being who you are and your track record, knowing that it would still be hard, because I feel like for most other business owners I know, and most of those are men, to just be like, check, 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 check,
Yeah. I mean, there's so many people that are like, it must be so easy. It's spirits, there must be so much money out there to find. And there's a ton of money out there, but it's really hard to find as a woman.
Yeah. You've been at this for a while now. It's been a decade in the making, thinking, dreaming, and you're still on the journey to grow this. And I know you're working tirelessly every day, all the time. What have been the biggest surprises? What have been the biggest?
I mean, the biggest challenge was just opening the doors. I think it was so much work just to do that. And I so clearly remember the feeling of like, oh my God, now I have a business to run. It felt like it'd been like the lifespan of a business, just raising money and building out the distillery, that I was like, oh no, I'm exhausted and I haven't even sold the first bottle yet. That was a huge moment of challenge and a lesson in just how do you sustain yourself through it. And I think you and I have even had the conversation, like the challenges never go away. There's just more zeros behind the problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's still like cash flow is the thing that keeps me up at night the most, followed by people, whether it's employees or a customer, like the human piece of it is so challenging and so rewarding.
Yeah.
Too. It's the best and the hardest.
I would definitely say people's a lot more challenging to me than the zeros. You feel it, you love people and you want to do right by them, and the zeros is just how you do right by those folks. And so you're like, it's a cycle. The pandemic, so you got your doors open, you're rolling,
open about
you've got
18 months.
momentum, and then shut down. So what were the big surprises, challenges, and how is that kind of reverberated forward?
Yeah, it's strange to say, but they were actually pretty fun days.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like all that existed was creativity. And you're expected to just bottom out. So it's like there's no expectations of us right now. we get to try anything. And so we started quickly making hand sanitizer, which a lot of distilleries did, like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of it. And it would be, like the fire department dropping off tiny little 2-ounce containers that were hand filling. Providence Hospital, it was just like donating a ton of it and selling a lot of it. And it kept that was the first phase of it that kept us going. And then we could start selling through what we called our booze through. So we were coming up with cocktail kits. Turns out people don't know how to make cocktails at home. A lot of people don't. So we're like, cool, we'll figure it out for them. So we started making these fresh mixers. So you could order ahead of time. We'd bring out your kit, your bottle and your mixer, and put it in your trunk. And off people would go. And the support from Portland was massive. There were just 5 of us at the distillery at that time, just working around the clock to fulfill these orders. And it saved us. And I think we've kind of gone back to business as usual somewhat, though there's still so many unknowns. But what has continued is that just commitment to creativity. And I can't even use the word pivot, because that, I think we all got so it makes me feel like my gut's being punched to even say that word. But to just continue that, we know how to be resilient now. We went through it, and who the hell knows what happens tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll roll up the sleeves and get creative and come up with something else.
What is ahead for you?
What is ahead? We are launching a whole lot of new states. So I am on the road constantly, heading to Atlanta next and then up to Boston. So we're going through a ton of growth, which is really exciting and scary. And building, stepping back, really letting the team own the business more and letting them tell me how they need to use me, which is cool. I really love speaking and I like the travel, the day-to-day stuff sometimes is I don't think it's like my best skill. So it's getting to a point in the business where I'm not forced to like do the things that I'm not very good at, which is super fun.
And a lot of people think growth, yay. But business owners know growth, that sucks all your cash. No.
Exactly.
So it's just this whole other set of challenges.
Yeah, growth is terrifying.
And what's the biggest challenge that you see ahead?
It's still like craft distilling is still such a tiny part of the industry, and we can keep pushing, we can keep growing, but we've got huge players that could have the ability to squash any one of us at any point. So I think it's the things you can't control that's so scary, right? And it's so hard to just let it go at the end of the day. I mean, like, you can't control it, just let it go. But that's what our kiddos remind us of. It's just let it go because we got to go to the pool and play.
Yeah. Do you have any other practices or things that you do to ground yourself and take the Freeland sweatshirt off, so to speak?
Somebody asked me recently, why do you exercise so much? That's because so people don't die.
Yeah.
That is certainly exercise and meditation. Tara Brach, I don't know if you've ever listened.
Absolutely.
She's my go-to right now. My dog helps. Anything that I think can just, if I can physically move through something, that helps a ton.
What is your favorite drink on the menu at the Freeland Tasting Room?
I love a Negroni. And we currently have a white Negroni on the menu with the forest gin. It's beautiful. I love that. At home, my go-to is mostly our dry gin, which was a product of the pandemic when we realized we were going to need something stronger if we were going to survive. So we came up with a Navy strength gin, which was actually like they would test it, back in the day. If they could light a cannon on fire, they would know it was strong enough. So that's where Navy strength came from. So that's we wanted to design like a perfect martini gin. So that's the dry gin, and that's my favorite at home. I love Negronis. That's my Negroni or my martini gin. Delicious.
That sounds delicious. And for folks that are not regulars at the Freeland Tasting Room, I know, I don't know where you've been. How do our listeners taste the Freeland Spirits? Where can they find you? How do they order or find out more? Yeah, so our tasting room's open noon to 8 every day. We do tours Fridays and Sundays at 3. You can also buy online, freelandspirits.com. Your tasting room is one of Northwest's best living rooms. Like a place to that's a lovely hang out. Steal that. Right? It really is. And tell us where it is and how to find you. Yes, it's on Northwest Vaughn, right by Montgomery Park. I'm sure people know the huge Montgomery Park. It's a historical landmark of Portland, so we're right next door to it on Northwest Vaughn. It is the perfect place to have a drink after a hike or a bike ride in our beautiful forest. Yes, and you can get flights of mini cocktails, so you can taste each one of our spirits in a different cocktail. And if you love it, you can bring the kit home to make for your family and friends. That is awesome. Where do people connect with the Freeland? Where can they find out more and connect with the Freeland story? Yes, follow us on Instagram. It's a very entertaining page full of drag queens. Check out the website and just come experience it in person. I really feel like, having drinks, seeing production, learning about the story, like IRL is the way to go. Thank you so much for coming on today. Always a delight. Any chance I get to hang out with you. Thanks again to Jill Kuehler for stopping by. Next time you're mixing drinks, make sure you check out Freeland Spirits. Next time, I'll be joined by Jessie Burke, owner of the Society Hotel. She's going to share with us how she fenced her way out of poverty to Penn State, all the way to Portland, to become one of the most influential women in our city. I'll see you there. Enjoy, Jenelle.